The Dateable podcast is an insider's look into modern dating that the Huffington Post calls one of the top 10 podcasts about love and sex. On each episode, we'll talk to real daters about everything from sex parties to sex droughts, date fails to diaper fetishes, and first moves to first loves. I'm your host, Yue Xu, former dating coach turned dating sociologist. You'll also hear from my co-host and producer, Julie Krafchick, as we explore this crazy dateable world. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Dateable, a show all about modern dating. So last year, Julie and I had a chance to visit New York, and as part of our trip, which was pretty epic.
Yes, super epic.
We did so much in like 3 days.
I know, it felt like we were there for a week, and it was what? It was
like 3 days, 2.5 days. But we got a chance to meet up with a friend of mine that I hadn't seen for years, Tommy Danger Kim, who has his own podcast called The Tommy Danger Experiment. And that's his actual middle name, Danger.
I love it. Like, I didn't realize that when we recorded. And then when you told me that after, I'm like, you guys will hear the episode, but it was amazing. But I think knowing his actual middle name is Danger just brings it to a whole nother level.
But after you met him, you probably thought, how fitting, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's like, Yue was just like, hey, my friend wants to have us on the podcast. And I think because we were in New York, we're like, let's take advantage of as many opportunities as we can. We met with a bunch of people at podcast companies, and we wanted to be on someone's podcast in New York.
Yeah.
So we jumped at the opportunity, and I had no idea. I think we were a little hungover when we showed up.
A little?
we were out
extremely hungover, and where we recorded at his co-working space, it was super sunny, and I remember just thinking, I want to wear sunglasses.
And we like got coffee because we were like, we were pretty, because we raged. Like, remember?
We were hammered the night before.
Because we were out a lot. Like, I mean, it was 3 days, but it felt like everything was jam-packed because we did the live show. That's why we went at the wing. So then we went out for drinks with everyone there.
Yeah.
And then I remember the next night we were like, okay, let's go to bed. Let's go out because we're in New York.
Yeah.
But let's not stay out super late.
And we didn't, really.
We were out till like 3.
Okay, I don't remember.
I remember we like met up with your friends and ended up at like a raging gay club, remember?
Yeah, and that's when I totally lost all sense of time.
And your friend, I remember he like picked me up on the street, and we were skipping hand in hand. We were like besties by the end. I like totally took Yue's friends under my wing.
Yeah, Rob and Trey, the most beautiful men in my life.
Oh, they were amazing.
But I have to say, we were not prepared to be on Tommy's show, but we were like, okay, let's show up, get some caffeine in us, we're gonna be good. But we ended up staying for 2 hours. Yeah. We recorded a 2-hour episode with Tommy for his podcast, and after we were done, we both were like, that was one of the best conversations we've had.
Yeah. His like whole mindset with the podcast is no editing, free-form conversation, let it go however long it goes. It's actually kind of amazing, just the fact that we were able to talk for 2 hours. I think we all like consciously, I had to get on a train to like the suburbs of New York, and you had to like meet a friend. So we're like, we have to stop talking. We would have been there for another 4 hours.
Yeah, possibly talking about everything. And in the beginning, like everybody always asks us about sex parties because it seems to be
volunteered it.
No, people ask us, Julie.
Pretty sure he didn't ask us.
Fine. That's our entry into every conversation is sex parties because it's a great icebreaker. It's also like, hey, Tommy, I haven't seen you in 10 years. Let's talk about sex parties. And he was down for it, talking about it. He was very intrigued. But by the end of the 2 hours, we got really deep.
We had a breakthrough.
We laugh about it now, but it was such a powerful moment because I hadn't talked to Tommy in so long. I had no idea that he was, divorced for a few years, but it felt like a fresh wound. And the breakup was very traumatizing for him.
Yeah, I remember like when we went over, you were like, I'm not really sure what his status is these days.
Yeah.
I think the last time I saw on Facebook, he might have just been recently divorced. Like you were just unsure of where he was at all in his life. And it's kind of like we brought this up in the episode too. It's like, this is the power of going deeper because if we had left after say an hour, we would have had a great conversation
about sex parties.
Yeah, it would have been very fun and surface level. But by the end, it felt like we were like, we knew each other. Like, we knew him.
Yes, we knew him on a whole new level. And I have a whole new level of appreciation for him.
Me too.
Even though we don't keep in touch all the time. Even you, Julie, you met him for the first time that day, but you felt like you had this connection that is exactly what we strive for these days.
Yeah, and now we're homies.
Now we get it.
He's like, I got you, homie. We get that all the time from him, which is amazing.
We all change our middle name to Danger as well.
Yeah.
So here's just a snippet of the episode because, again, it's 2 full hours. If you want to hear it, you can go on his podcast, the Tommy Danger Experiment podcast. So just a little background on who Tommy is.
Yeah.
He's in his late 30s. He's been in New York for 10 years, originally from
LA.
Yeah. So he did the West Coast to East Coast thing. He's currently single and he's figuring shit out.
Yeah, he is healing from that divorce, but I think we had a breakthrough with him.
Well, I think everybody wants to hear about this breakthrough.
And they're going to. So.
Let us introduce you to Tommy Danger.
So can we get personal and ask you some questions?
By all means.
Yeah, let's
do
it. I think the end
Just
of
not
this.
my credit score. It's horrible.
I think our goal, Yue, I don't know if you're on the same page, but I think we should create some sort of experiment. So I want to hear more about your dating life.
Which is non-existent.
When you say non-existent, what does that mean?
I try. I mean, I'm always good to go up to the batter's box and take a couple of swings. I was just like, I got struck out again.
Are you on apps?
No.
Why not?
I was on Seeking for a little bit.
Seeking arrangements?
Yeah, that was fun. And
Tell us about that.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys? Yeah,
I mean,
for me, it was fun. I just used it as a dating app. What I know about dating is that you have to be in the hottest app and you have to be willing to pay. All the hip girls who are hip to the shit of whatever is trendy or becoming a trend, like they'll be there and they'll be down.
They'll be first.
Yeah, and they're on it because they're down to hang out.
So what are you looking for?
For me, just to date. Not really looking for a relationship.
Okay.
Why not?
It's just got too much going on, and I feel like it's what I call the declining marginal utility. It's like economic.
Oh God!
It's like I get geeky about it. It's like as a relationship gets older, like as time goes by on the horizontal axis, like the sex and the fun and everything goes down, and the drama and the maintenance goes up. I'm just like after once like 6 months mark, it's just rapidly declines.
Okay, so you and your friend Evan talked about this on his episode of how the sex goes down and women like have less sex drive throughout a relationship. I think that's because it's
in that relationship she does. That woman does.
But when you succumb to that idea, when you subscribe to the notion that people do lose their sex drive in a long-term relationship, of course it's going to happen, right? Because you've already set your mind to that.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of relationships where the sex gets better over time because you get to experiment.
Go to a sex party.
Bring in a Pegasus.
Listen, I
do a little pegging.
I have 2 feet. Okay, I'm only gonna wear a pair of shoes. I'm not gonna wear a dozen pair of shoes all at the same time. Like, I'm not interested in like group sex. Is like, no, it's just.
It doesn't have to be group sex.
Yeah,
I think we're no.
Just joking. Yeah, there's
any
other ways that you can make it happen.
It's just like the more you get to know someone, the more you uncover, and that's where it gets really exciting.
More comfortable, yeah.
I think one night stands are some of the worst sex
Me too.
I've ever had. Because
hands down,
right? Because you don't know that person, so you can't actually know their pleasure zones. But if you've been with someone for 10 years, you know all the right buttons to push, but then also you can experiment with other buttons.
I'd be down with that. It's just that maybe in my experience, maybe it's just the woman that I attract, and maybe it's my operating level where I'm okay to hang out and have fun and do cool things together. It's just that unnecessary drama. And women will like, when they're in the right mindset, they'll admit that they're just making a shitstorm.
You're dating the wrong women then. No,
yeah, what's an example?
Like that.
So,
I want to hear an example.
So when like you didn't do something nice for me, or you were just being cold that moment, I'm just like, I just got home. I'm just like taking my boots off, you know.
But that's just that's
you know, and then the little things make bigger. It's just like
that's a product of lack of communication.
Yeah,
in a relationship.
exactly.
It has nothing to do with the woman or the man. It's if you're not communicating, then you're resenting someone for what you haven't communicated to them.
Right.
That's all that is.
Built up resentment.
We hear that all the fucking time. Like men would be like, this came out of nowhere. And the women would be like, oh, I gave you all these signs, but I didn't actually verbally.
Yeah.
But that's that's just a product of a bad relationship.
I mean, I think that's like, honestly, from doing this podcast for 3.5, almost 4 years, communication is literally the thing that comes up in every episode. And it's interesting because
every episode
we're not taught this ever. Like, right? Like,
I don't think so. I don't
ever.
I don't think that maybe I am the problem. Maybe what I want. But for me, like, there are some things that I'm not going to even figure out. Like, maybe it's the terrain, maybe it's the culture, maybe it's the times and ages that we're in. But I feel like, I'm not looking for an exclusive, like, monogamous relationship. I'm not looking to like figure out. I'm 39. I'm almost 40. I figured out myself. Like, if I'm an asshole, I'm okay being an asshole. Like, if someone wants to hang out with me, be with me, maybe she could be my girlfriend. Maybe we could be some level of exclusivity, and we could travel together and do cool stuff. By all means, I would totally love that, And if there are definitely areas in my life that I need to improve on in terms of communicating, listen, I have a goddamn podcast. I think I'm pretty good.
That's not the same though.
I think I'm okay. I think I'm okay.
Talking and communicating are two very different
it's like
things.
when
exactly.
But no, a lot of times in discussions with dating and relationship, it's like communication comes up, and a lot of times, more so than not, the finger is pointed at men. Granted, awesome, I'm so there, but at the same time, some responsibility has to be put on women as well, because it's like women, just how they're wired, it's not meant to be direct, but we live in such a direct society, so it's very hard for women to reconcile those two, because women are expected to speak up, are expected to speak their minds, but a lot of times their hardware says don't do it. So when it comes to a personal context of a man and a woman, it's very hard, because men expect women to speak up, women expect themselves to speak up, but it's not. So it's like, where do we go? So yeah, it's tough. It's tough both ways.
But this is the way we see it, because this is what we get from all the couples we've interviewed on the show.
Yeah.
Is that you can either see that as a major challenge that's like the ultimate demise of your relationship, or you see it as a really exciting opportunity to evolve as a couple.
Yeah.
So what's really fun about that is, I remember when I first started dating my boyfriend, he called me out so many times. He'd be like,
really?
what do you want? Like, what would make you happy? And I'd just beat around the bush, and I'd be unhappy about something.
Wow.
And then he would say, in therapy, because he went to therapy, he's like, in therapy, I learned to step back and ask what could help us as a couple move forward. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's about us. And that really opened up a platform for both of us to say, oh, if I'm taking the individual out of this, and we're in this as a team, then we can work on certain tools together to move our relationship forward. And that was just so fun, because you're just solving a puzzle at that point. It's no longer a challenge or a burden.
And I think even if you don't have a partner that's like at that level, like, I think, at least for me, like, I was 100% what you said. Like, I would be like, I'm not gonna like say what I want. Like, I'm just gonna like,
but how does
silently
he not know?
thinking. I think over the years, I will say a lot of it is therapy too. I will attribute it to that. Also, just experience, right? Like, that doesn't work. So it's like, I think both people need to meet each other. Like, I think it's not a woman, it's not a man. Like, we are wired differently. I think that is like real,
and
right?
just that basic foundation, to even just to start at that point in today's age, is like that we are wired different. Twitter, whatever, they just lose their mind. No, we're all the same, blah, blah. We
are wired different.
We are wired
fundamentally.
We can complement each other. That's how we're different.
I mean, people can shit talk this generation of dating. There's a lot, obviously, that is challenging. But I think the thing that is the most positive that we see is, I feel like historically there was like uneven like power levels between men and women. And I think like the couples that are really like thriving that we're seeing are more in that partnership mentality. And like kind of like what you just described, Yue. How are we gonna like do this together? Like, I'm not perfect, you're not perfect. We don't all have to think exactly the same way, and we can recognize like I've gotten upset. Oh, I can't believe he doesn't like understand. This is like so annoying to me, or like whatever. And I'm like, you take a step back. We're not thinking the same way. We're two very different people. The more like we have that communication, people are more just like equals. I think that stuff starts to become less of a problem.
It's exactly that. And it's just this constant negotiation between two people. When I went to couples therapy, all they ever talked about was every day is a negotiation with your partner. It's not about an ultimatum. It's not about demands. It's like, how can we meet midway? And I think even in the beginning of my relationship, I remember being just like you, Tommy, being like, I was 37 years old. I'm like, I'm 37 years old. I know myself really well. If you don't like me, then, you can,
I'm
right?
listening to you right now. It's like, go girl,
You can be with other people because I'm like really confident in who I am. And that's just who I am. And my boyfriend said this to me. He's like, totally cool if you know who you are, but if you care about me, would you consider?
Oh, he's so good,
right? Because it's all the years of therapy. Yeah. He's like, would you consider doing this with me? Would you consider letting go of this part of you? Because I was very much like, I don't want to sleep over in the beginning. I want to be independent. I want my own bed. It's just who I am. I like my personal space. He's like, great, that's who you are. But would you? It makes me very happy to wake up next to you. Would you consider? Yeah.
Oh man, he's so good. I would wake up next to him.
But you could totally use the same tactics.
Exactly. You always just say, would you consider doing this? If because I care about you, you care about me. Would you consider doing this?
People aren't mind readers. I think that's definitely something I've learned along the way. Is like I definitely expected people to be mind readers, and you can't expect that. Like if you say something and then they aren't willing to meet you, that's one thing. But if you just never say anything, how could you ever expect that?
Yep.
But I guess you're saying though is like you don't want to put in that effort right now. All this is good, but I still don't want to do this.
I'm at full brim. I'm at capacity in terms of how can I put this in an apt analogy? It's like I'm working really hard to become the best basketball player I can be. But I am 5'8" and I can't jump that really high. So it's like, why would I don't have, I go on dates, I hook up, there's some friends with benefits at times here and there, but it's few and far between. I'm not looking for, or I'm not planning to be in a relationship, let alone a serious one. So it's like, I would love to work on myself given that opportunity with that special someone. Who's also looking to kind of like what you were describing, that situation, like getting really deeper into that and knowing for someone for a long period of time, maybe for like 3 months. But no, it's like
long-term relationship right there.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
right?
a lifetime.
Yeah. So for me, it's just like I got my business, my daytime job. Got this podcast. I want to get into comedy scene. Want to do stand up. I got a lot of fun things going on my own. So it's like I love talking about this, but for me, it's just like, I think I'll work on myself as a boyfriend, as a partner when I'm in my 50s or something.
So basically, it's just not a priority for you now. You feel fulfilled in other ways.
I think that's okay.
That's totally cool.
I mean, I think one of the things we've seen is like people are all over the map of what they're looking for. Like it's definitely not assumed that everyone's looking for a long-term monogamous relationship at all.
But I will say this though, we interviewed a startup founder on the show.
Yeah.
And his whole shtick was, I sleep on my couch at the office. I'm married to my company. My kids are my employees. I'm not going to get into a relationship. It's not a priority. First of all, we aired that episode and like 50 women reach out to him, was like, I can change your mind. And he's like, no.
He's our most reached out to guest of everyone. The one that's like, I don't want to be in a relationship.
Yeah, like flat out. Yeah. But then like 2 years later, he's now married. Okay. But we interviewed them. We interviewed him after the fact, and we asked what changed. And he said this, I think, is like the most interesting takeaway from his episode, which was he felt at the time relationships would be a burden, or they would distract him from his goals and his dreams. But when he met his now wife, she actually added to that. She empowered him to pursue his career and his other passions. She never dragged him down. She lifted him up even more. Yeah.
That's for me exactly what it is. I'm still getting over my divorce. I mean, I was married for a hot minute, and
What's a hot minute?
2 months, literally, we barely sent out the thank you cards after our wedding. Wow. She's bringing up the divorce, and she couldn't even say it. So we got married in September, and our real honeymoon, we had trips and weekenders afterwards. But
this is this year.
This was 2014.
Okay, I was
Okay.
like,
Yeah.
this is not this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, no. I'm so much better right
You're
now.
like,
yeah.
You're like, this happened last week.
right.
We just filed last week.
That's why I'm not ready.
We filed today. I just got back from City Hall.
Tommy's like, I live here now at my co-working space.
This is why we're down on
Don't
the
tell me to shut up.
fifth
This
floor.
is my home.
I live here.
Wait,
Penthouse.
how long were you guys dating for?
We were dating for, or like, let's get into this. We were dating
this is
for
interesting.
a year and a half before I proposed. And we were living together for most of that time. We're both Korean American, about the same age.
How'd you
And
meet?
We met through PK.
Seeking arrangements?
No. I was a sugar baby. In some ways, that's kind of actually true.
Did she pay for your breast implants?
It's a horrible job. It's like A- cups, not even. It's deflated. What happened was, so I grew up Christian, but I left the church, and similar to PK, we have this overlap of talking about our growing up religious, but now we're not religious anymore.
Mm-hmm.
He invited me to a meetup that's for people who are trying to leave the church, leave the faith.
Oh, wow.
And
Very
that's how I
specific.
met my ex. She was also there. So we had a lot of things in common, being Korean American, around the same age, very overbearing parents, both trying to leave the church and deconvert ourselves. So we had a lot of fun discussions early on, and we started dating, and we fell in love pretty much right away. At the time, I was switching careers. I was trying to be a real estate agent. But I'm just not a good salesman. Here's the apartment. Do you want it? No? Where are you going? Come back. Pay my broker fee. Yeah, it's not good. I wasn't that good at all. Don't mind the rats. They're just neighborhoods.
Roommates.
Yeah, roommates. Yeah, fun roommates. We got a little puppy dog, and we were living together, having a lot of fun, traveling. I proposed, and we got married. We got married about 2 years into being together. Once we got married, and I was very struggling as a real estate agent. I wasn't doing that well. It's a commission job. It's brutal. So for me, it's just trying to get my head. I was just like head in the clouds. Like, love my wife, my new bride, but at the same time trying to, as a man, it's like, how do I fix this mess about I'm not making that much dough here. I got to bring home the bacon, gotta
Pressure.
Yeah, prove my worth,
Right.
Especially as a new husband. It's just like, I gotta figure this out. So do I keep on doing this, or do I just back out and figure out something else? That's the knock on me, that I wasn't really going at it objectively and pragmatically. I was just like dragging my feet in this process when someone else was materially involved. The knock on her was she didn't give me enough time. 2 months, we barely sent out the thank you cards to our wedding guests. She's like, you want to go to our honeymoon as friends? I'm like, we are friends.
What?
I'm like, what do you mean friends? Like, no, you want to go to a honeymoon as friends? I'm like, wait,
What?
let's sit down. Let's talk. What do you mean as friends? She's like, I don't know if we're meant to be. I'm like, what are you talking about? We just got married. So that just went down a nice rabbit hole of, we barely eked out the honeymoon. It was the worst trip ever.
So you did go on the honeymoon.
We did go on a honeymoon. It was so awkward.
But with this
we
impending divorce.
We just fought.
I cannot believe.
We just fought. We just fought. We didn't file yet, but we just fought.
Can we back up for a second?
Yeah.
Because
Wow.
this is explaining the communication stuff all so much. She was just like, we're going to, like, can we go as friends? She never brought up, like, she's having any issues or anything.
She literally was asking me, can we file a divorce and still go on the honeymoon together?
But she never brought up, like, I'm feeling this, or, like, can we, like, talk about
We
this?
had a lot of fights about finances.
Fights. Different than discussion. But you fought.
We fought more than we discussed. And when we discussed, it was very hard negotiations.
So it was all about finances? Do you think that was the demise?
We were not good for each other, in the sense that not just like we weren't working on ourselves and trying to improve, but I like to go hang out and just act a fool and drink and have fun, right? She has some level of social anxiety. She does not like drinking. She does not like living in this adventurous thing I have. She has a very stable career. For me, it's just like, everything's an adventure. Life is an experiment. Let's figure this out. I don't know, like maybe it's just opposites attract, you know? So,
But for 2 years, it worked.
for 2 years, we had a great time.
And were you fighting while you were dating?
But once we got engaged, once that rock got on her finger, she got into a different mode.
Well, do
And
you
I
think
didn't
his
realize that.
finance too, like it became like this is about both of us, where when you're dating, it's like
Yeah.
that's your finance.
Yeah,
this
that's
is
your debt.
It's
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
It's different.
It's tough. It's
But
tough.
we also interviewed a divorce lawyer on our show, and he said on surface level, most
Yeah.
couples get divorced because of finance or because of
Sex.
a lack of
Or
sex.
lack of sex.
But he said that those two actually go way deeper into a much more prevalent issue in a relationship, and it's beyond sex and finances. Those are like kind of the consequences.
Surface level.
They're like
surface-
the easy things to point to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But everything goes down way deeper.
Yeah, yeah. And
So-
I don't know exactly what it is. I'm 4 or 5 years removed from that, and for me, I'm still like trying to figure out what happened there. You know.
So she filed for divorce after the honeymoon?
So afterwards, we were just trying to get along, but then like my career wasn't going so well at all. She just had it, you know. So she broke down. I'm just like, because she needed me to be on board. She wouldn't do it all by herself. She needed me to be on board with the whole separation process. So I was like, okay, fine. Let's
just do it.
it's a sunk cost. Let's just move on. You go your way, I go my way.
How many months after you got married?
That was pretty much a year on the dot.
Wow.
So beyond finances, she never brought up what, like it was solely finances she talked about. There was
Yeah.
nothing else that
Yeah.
she brought up.
Yeah. She's like, if you just had a meager salary, like I'd be happy with that. And for me, I had a tough, because we fought so much over that, I had a tough time believing what she said. Yeah. I don't think it's a meager salary.
Well, this is what we also hear in relationships too, because people think they're these milestones that will save your relationship. Oh,
Yeah.
if we
Yeah.
made this much money, we'd be happy. If we had a kid, we'd be happy. And when they reach these milestones, they're
That's
still
what I call
unhappy.
in my head. That's what I call that. Like what we think of marriage and happily ever after is a what I call a promotion that never arrives.
Yeah.
Like especially growing up Asian American, growing up religious, conservative, family is everything, right? Family is the church. So it's like for me, my dad is just obsessed, and still is, about me I'm the only son too. So me getting married and having kids and all that. So that's just like, and all these steps. But what I experienced with my ex is just like, nah, it's never enough.
Yeah.
It's never enough.
There's
Like
always
never
gonna
an
be
and it's
end.
almost like
issues.
it's
Never
almost
an
like,
end.
and it's not a knock on her, but it's just the wiring within us, you know.
Yeah.
You know. And for me, it's like, yeah, I know it's not enough. I have to keep on climbing the ladder. I have to get blah 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 blah. Granted, like it was really interesting for me. It's a shock, and I was just became a little Korean Hulk monster when she would say these things while we're fighting, because she was like, "Well, we need a car." I'm like, "We live in New York City. We don't need a car. We have
Right.
I have a Zip car membership. We can. It's right there at the garage. Why do you know?
Yeah,
we need to
it's-
travel. What do you mean? We just got back from a trip. What do you mean? Why are you fighting about? We're talking about our matrimony here. You're talking about traveling. Like, what are you talking about? So I realized that, you know, people can get, not just women, but men too, definitely. Like, people can get into this weird, deep, very oddly, awkwardly personal, very deep things, the heat of the moment when you're fighting. But it's hard to bring out and talk about, because a lot of people can't talk about it, even address it even to themselves, let alone to your partner.
Because we don't have the tools to do so.
Yes.
If you didn't know how to describe colors, if you didn't know red was red, you'd just be
Right.
describing, it's just like this thing, right? And it looks like this, and you can't use the words. It's really frustrating. This is why babies cry.
Right.
Because they can't describe what they're trying to tell
Yeah.
you. And I think for her behavior to say, we need a car, we need to travel, it could all be rooted down to, I'm feeling trapped.
Yeah.
I'm feeling lonely.
Or I'm not feeling secure.
I'm not feeling
Yeah, I
secure.
think-
But she didn't have the tools to
And I
describe
didn't have the
that.
tools to, hey, I understand that stability, particularly financial stability, is very important to you. We just got engaged, or we just got married. because for me, I'm not going to go to a job for the sake of bringing home the bacon. For me, whatever I do for a living and how I make a living is that's me. Like it's intertwined.
Yep.
I need to be 110% at what I do. I can't just phone it in. So how are we going to reconcile these two things? I didn't have that tool. I couldn't have that.
And people are very different with that stuff. Like some people are all about just like having a stable lifestyle. Did you guys ever talk about that like while you were dating, like before you got engaged? Did you guys ever talk about that like while you were dating, like before you got engaged?
We both had a very tough time talking about that. Yeah. We both had a tough maybe it's just our upbringing or just our personalities, but we both had a tough time.
Money is really hard to talk about until you talk about it, and then it just blows up.
I mean, I think it's like we were saying earlier, it's like communication. It always comes down there. It's so hard. We don't have the tools like you just said, but I think it's so important to have these conversations like
before you get engaged.
Early dating, like even if it's not like money, like I agree, like you're not gonna be like, how much do you make, or like something like that, but like what is important to you in like life, like what is important to you in a career, like is it stability, is it like being so passionate that like you can risk not necessarily knowing how much you're gonna make, because people have very different risk thresholds and it's very important to hear that
and
right
playing
away.
out the scenarios, right? If we were to get married and one person loses their job, how would we handle that?
Right.
These are not the discussions we have before.
No.
Because before you get engaged, it's like, she's cool, she's pretty, we have a good time, we can cook together, and all of a sudden you get married and you're like, fuck, we're doing life.
Yeah, all my friends were like, why'd you marry? I'm like, you had great sex. What do you want from me? You know? What do you want me to say?
It's so simple.
She looked great naked. What do you want me to say? I'm a man, you know?
But then it's beyond that.
Yeah, of course.
You're doing
so
life
much
together.
beyond that.
So you file for divorce, or you're separated a year in. When does the divorce happen?
Pretty much once you file, that's the beginning of it. We didn't even have lawyers. Thank God I was broke. That was
She's like, I don't even need to take
blessing
you for anything.
She's super smart too, so she worked out everything. I just had to like, oh, notary? Okay, cool. That's it. Okay.
Just sign.
And just wait for the judge to.
How did you break it to your family?
How did I break it? I don't remember. I think I just had a talk. I met with my parents. I told them, hey, it's not working out. So
you said 2 months after was when it like started to fall apart.
Yeah.
When did you said a year after? Or?
So we got legally married in July. We had a wedding ceremony in September. By November, she brought it up. January, we actually made it to our honeymoon, which is just whatever.
Which is crazy.
In April or May, we had a big fight. And then June, we filed.
Got it.
And
So
I left our little apartment. She has the puppy dog.
Oh,
missed that. I had a harder time getting over the dog than her.
I know. I hear
still
that
miss
all
that
the
dog.
time.
I still miss that dog. The dog didn't do anything
I
wrong.
know.
The
He's
dog
your
didn't call me
baby.
names.
Yeah, that's your baby.
Yeah, and then we filed in June, and then once we filed, it's just waiting for the paperwork to go
What
through.
a freaking blur.
Yeah.
I told Julie this. So my boyfriend is divorced, and we went out one night and he brought out 2 of his friends who are also divorced, and they call themselves the Ex-Husbands Club. I told Julie as soon as I got out of this event, and I was like, I had no idea the impact of divorce on men, because
Huge.
all of them were such wounded birds. And they told me it's like taking them
It's
years
crazy.
to get over
You look
it.
at the numbers, level of suicides,
It's
crazy.
It's exponentially
More
higher.
women initiate divorce.
More
There's
women
a
initiate
stat
it.
on that.
And the men told me that
Yeah.
they said, this is my ultimate failure.
yeah.
And I feel like I was responsible
You
for
want to
this
know how
failure.
crazy it is? For me, I went on a date with this girl a couple of weeks ago, and there was a notion that I had met her before, but I was kind of fuzzy on it. So when we got together, we were hanging out. So I brought it up. When did we meet? You said we met before? Like, yeah, we met. We had coffee. Like, when was this? And we're just trying to comparing notes, figure it out. It was when I had moved out of the apartment.
Oh.
And so there's multiple instances like this where I completely blacked out.
Wow.
This girl and we had coffee. We talked about real estate. And she was saying things back to me. I was like, that's something I would say. Holy shit, but I don't remember it.
Wow.
Because you experience trauma and loss. It's
Yeah.
almost the same as experiencing a death in the
So
family.
weird.
It's really weird because people do black
weird.
out.
I
and
had
they
no
forget.
idea who she was.
I mean, from everything you're saying, I totally see where you're coming from now of not wanting to get back in there. But this is like the existential debate. It's like, does the past influence the future, right? And it's like, in some level, it does. Yeah. If you don't want to be in a relationship, you don't want to be in a relationship. But also, it's like, is it just because like of the past and you're like scared to go there again?
I'll be honest. Totally.
Exactly. And like, that's kind of.
I love being in a relationship. I love what that guy said. Waking up next to somebody.
I hear
I love that.
I hear your voice saying one thing, and then your words saying something else. Yeah. And I think that's really unfortunate because with the men I spoke to as well, all of them have seeked out support in some way. So one guy is in a legit support group for men who are divorced, and they've really helped each other get back into the dating scene because he said that was the hardest. Just feeling that emptiness of like once you start dating, because even if you're dating and sleeping around, that emptiness is just so prominent. You just like feel it all the time.
Especially when people like ghost you or just like little things that like happen all the time in dating are like magnified when you're already feeling that way.
Absolutely. So what are some steps you've taken to find support? Podcast?
Yeah, really. I mean, it's like I really find that, and it's as cheesy as it sounds, I realized I had to be me. I had to be more like me. So getting into comedy, doing podcast, doing more creative, and kind of leaving things open-ended. It's like that's really me. I had to be comfortable with that. So it's like the whole me getting married, I felt like I was like on an autopilot. Like I was just following rules set out there. It's like, oh, my dad's really happy, so I should be happy. Kind of like my family's really happy, so
you can check in with yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so interesting because it's like on one side, like we've said, it sounds like ultimately it would be great to like find that person again for you. And it's like, how do you use what you've learned and like approach it differently? Right. I think that's like the only thing that you can do when you've gone through something like this devastating.
And how do you do that? And how do you do that organically with open mind, open heart, without having a mental checklist?
I know.
It's like, oh, you got a B+ there.
That's the part that's tough with baggage because it's like, it's good because it gives you life experience. It tells you, like, for example, like if you now date someone, maybe you'll be more focused on like having those conversations ahead of time opposed to like just being like, oh, she's great in bed, let's get married. The other part of baggage is it taints like how you're looking at things. It gives kind of some negative energy sometimes. So it's like, how do we take that baggage and not make it baggage, but make it a way that we can grow from it instead?
It is really hard because you're probably a little gun shy.
Yeah.
My boyfriend definitely is that way. And he also had a very short marriage and engagement period, all that. Like at the time, he felt like it was the right thing to do. It was also kind of like fun to be spontaneous. It's great to find love in a short amount of time. It's great. But but now he's like, I don't know if I can jump into that again, with the same sort of like excitement.
But you also don't want to block it. Your example, like you're a different person than his ex, right? Like
I hope guys,
so. Right. But like you,
surprise, I'm the same bitch.
But like just because you dealt with someone that couldn't communicate doesn't mean that there isn't a woman out there that is willing to like meet you halfway and like really like talk about what's happening and like get to that like place that like I think what you said earlier was interesting. Like I don't want to just like deal with like drama. Like there's a lot of women out there that aren't drama. So it's like how do you like find that and like not make this not get you to like a happy point, or you just keep going because it sounds like you are pretty happy. Like I guess it's ultimately, are you happy right now?
We always say like it's about timing, and I think we take that word like a little lightly. We're like, timing is when you're at the same life stage and you're ready for the same things. It's not because most people can't communicate what they're looking for. So you don't know if you're on the same page. But I think it's really important to be at the same mental stage. And that is so hard. That's what's the most challenging when it comes to dating, is that someone has to be almost like on the same journey as you in a parallel life, that they want the same changes, they want the same evolution, but they might have gone through kind of the same baggage. That's when you can like really connect with someone. I mean,
We turned this into a therapy session for
good.
you.
It's really great to talk about this.
Healing right
You're
now.
healing.
I'm like, yes,
But
this is what I need.
we talked about this as well. It's like women have ways to seek support.
Yeah.
Because we've grown up with so many resources. All of women's magazines are there to support, even if they're giving bad advice. Men don't grow up with those resources. So when you do seek them, you feel like really lost because you don't know where to go. Like one of the guys I spoke to, one of the ex-husbands club members, he went out and just sought out all male support group for divorced men. And he was able to find a few. So I think that's like one way to really go about doing it. Just hear other people's
Maybe that's your
experiences.
experiment.
Yeah.
Find out. I mean, we went from your experiment being like go to a sex party to now it's like going to a male supports group. But
We went from like sleep with as many women as possible at one time to now just seek only men.
but I think that should be your experiment. Is like
I kind of like that.
I don't want to subscribe what the format should be. We can let you figure that out. But it's like, what is a way that I could get support or at least look into ways? That could be your experiment. And how does that help me?
Listen, when I woke up this morning, I didn't realize this would be what we'd be talking about. I was like, oh, you and her co-host, we're going to talk about...
We didn't either. We were hungover.
We had no idea what we were coming into.
That's what we're going to talk about. The weather's nice.
But I do think we came to some clarity today. I think some things are very clear. I think first and foremost, Tommy, you ultimately you want to find your person.
Yeah.
And ultimately you want to be in a loving relationship where you feel supported and you feel respected, right? So that's
Respected,
number
keyword.
one. So you saying, I'm not ready for a relationship, I'm not ready for this, I have other things going on. I think that's typical avoidant behavior where you're just distracting yourself from what you ultimately want as a partner.
And the reason why I say that is, I think I would say the same thing when I first met my ex-wife, because like, oh, I'm changing careers. I have to be a real estate broker. I have to figure this out. I have to make it. It's going to be commission only, blah, blah, blah. It's a whole new thing. The reason why I still stick to that is because, one, I don't want to look thirsty. Like, can you guys set me up with somebody? No, not like that. But also, I think as a guy, I think it's incredibly attractive and sexy for women to see when a man is very focused in what he's doing. Like, I'm building something. I'm trying to build multiple things here. And I had never been this focused before. Before it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do real estate and just hang out and meet people and cool. But no, I'm really focused on this. I'm really, I'm hitting another level here, which a lot of guys do in their late 30s and 40s. They reach another level in terms of whatever they're trying to do. Along the way, if someone is like, I'm not gonna compromise too much of that.
No.
Just some level of that. And if she, like what you were saying earlier, exactly what you were saying earlier, if she adds to that, if she has her own thing, if she's a badass herself, that's so awesome, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm in the same boat as you because I'm single right now. We obviously have this podcast. I have another job. It's like, it is a lot. And it's like, sometimes I'm like, oh, and I have to make time for dating. But I'm like, ultimately, I want to be with someone that like, that is what I want. So I'm like, I'm trying not to look at it as like, I need to do this, but rather like this is enhancing my life also. And like the right person is going to support what I'm doing. I can support them. So it's like there is a lot that it's just how you spin it, right?
Yeah.
Like internally.
Yeah. If you're starting a business, you take investor meetings, right?
Right.
It's the same thing.
Right.
If you're going on dates, these are basically investor meetings because these are the people who are investing in you.
Yeah.
And I think
This is what we're doing. If you want to be part of this, by all means. But if you don't, that's good, you know?
absolutely. But the good thing about all of this is that you just spend your time wisely. You don't go on multiple dates a week because that's a waste of your fucking time.
I agree. I think I've definitely got to that point. Like I remember I had this one guy that was like, I want to chat for 3 weeks before I meet you. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I just don't have time for that. I'm like, we either get in or get out. I'm like, this is like, and like, honestly, I'll throw out dates really fast now because I'm like, I don't have time to like talk to internet strangers. I'm like, we're either meeting or we're going to get along and then I'll talk to you or we're not. Like, you know, so it's like
all my I don't know what it is, like people who want to give me dating advice, give me bad dating advice in the sense that, Tommy, you should be nicer to girls. I'm like, what do you mean?
No.
It's
I
not about
connect with women
that.
and I ask them out after like hello, nice meeting you at the thing. She's like, nice meeting you too. What are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. What are you doing? Okay, cool. You want to hang out sometime? You want me to say, hey, this is nothing sexual. I'm not being a creep. I just want to get to know you. You want me to get... They're like, no, that's not a thing. But that's what basically you're implying.
I mean, everyone should be nice to people, right?
That's
like, I'm going to put that
baseline.
around. That's exactly.
That's not advice.
But I think there's like this old school mentality of like men having to like put out so much to women. And I think like, I'm not trying to say like men shouldn't do this, but I think there's like this more sense of like equality and partnership. A lot of women just want someone that is going to be like there for them and like supportive. And I think the same for men too. It's like, I feel like it would be misleading and you'd go down that same path if you like bent over backwards for some woman and like, let's just get to the point and see if we're compatible.
Yeah.
Well, I had a female friend who told me, she's the sweetest. She's very unique. She told me, Tommy, you should think of it as courtship.
No, that's outdated.
Courtship? Well, I should write her a letter. Dearest Heather, it was the most beautiful day to meet you in like old English. That's not courtship. That's being creepy. Don't do that, you know?
Yeah.
When you find a true connection with someone, you naturally do things for them
Right.
that could be called courtship, that could be called romance.
Yeah.
But you just naturally want to do
And
it
the
for
little
someone you
things,
connect
it's the little
with.
things
Exactly.
because it's something, maybe it's fate, maybe like she's moved by it, just the little things.
Oh my God, I remember with my ex, like this was like, I think when he was just like, oh my God, I found the person. I didn't do anything. Like he was like sleeping. I like went to get coffee and I like grabbed him a bagel. And like he was like, this is like the most amazing thing ever. And I'm like, really? Like I got you a bagel. But
Nice.
I think it was
a
like
little
this
thing.
It is a
like
little things.
yeah, like I was like, I didn't even like think anything of it. Like obviously I'm gonna pick you up food, you know?
I mean, see, that's the thing. Like people think it's these gestures that are going to win someone over, but it's the little things that show that you truly know someone. I still remember like when I lived in New York, I was in a 5-year relationship. 4 years into our relationship, for Christmas one year, he bought me a sling box. And I was like, what the fuck? You don't know me at all. All you had to get me was like basically
bagel.
a tub of ice cream. And I would have been ecstatic.
Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
I
got
don't
me
want
a
a bagel.
sling box because he's like, I went to Best Buy and it looked like it was the most popular product. Like,
Right.
do you even know me?
Exactly.
You've been together for 4 years. But that's the thing. You could be together with someone for years and not really know them. In those moments that you connect on a first date, the goal is to get to know this person,
Yeah.
not to sell
And
yourself.
also if you're like totally on different wavelengths, then that's a sign too.
that's great to know.
Exactly.
Get out.
Okay, we've given you so many experiments.
I know.
So
Okay, are
much
you going to take this
advice.
on? We didn't even get an answer out of you.
I don't know. It's just so much. So much to.
But our experiment challenge to you is to seek support.
So group sex.
No. Group sex, we're tabling
Sex
that.
club. Okay. Seek support.
Seek support to help you heal more. Because I don't, like you said, you're not completely healed either.
And it could be like a gateway in. Like it's
Damaged it.
no, but like sometimes like it's even like maybe it's even like finding a podcast or something. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be like in group therapy now. Like it can be like baby steps to that.
But group
So we're-
therapy is also great for networking, by the way, because you never know
I mean,
who's in
again,
it.
if you're willing to go to group therapy, we're not preventing you, but we're just saying the challenge doesn't have to be so. It's whatever your comfort level is. It's just a step.
Yep.
What do you think is like the state, like, you know, like every year the president addresses the State of the Union. What do you think is like the state of dating nowadays? What do you think is like the state of dating nowadays? Like,
That's a good
where,
question.
where
Let's
is
get that.
dating?
Wait, you didn't answer our question though.
Yeah.
Are you going to take this on?
I like
you
this
were-
distraction.
She didn't buy my deflection.
I love it. Like he's trying to
Great question, but you didn't answer the question.
You almost
first.
got it. I almost got you.
You did. You did.
listen. I do the same shit with other people, so I recognize what you're doing. Give us an answer first, and then we'll answer your question.
What is the question? Like, what am I going
Are you taking on our experiment challenge of seeking support?
I think this podcast for me is like this sport for me, just to
No, it
talk.
needs to go
Beyond
one
this.
more.
Beyond this?
this.
Yeah.
Seeking outside support.
I don't know. I haven't thought about it.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll give you some time to think about
We'll
it.
ask you again at the end.
I haven't really. I've dabbled with therapy and just a couple of them and a few sessions at a time. And for me, it's like, I guess I could do this. I guess it could be helpful at the same time. Maybe not. I mean,
there's other alternatives. I mean, so much of it is finding the right therapist. It's like finding the right partner, right? Like I've gone to an amazing therapist, and I've gone to one that was very mediocre, and I actually left the one that was mediocre because I'm like, I'm not getting anything from this. Yeah. But there's also like online therapy. Like there's other ways that you can like kind of ease yourself in. So like, I think there's other alternatives that don't have to be so drastic.
Yeah. Think about it.
Yeah.
We'll give you 5 minutes while we answer your question.
Yeah.
How's that?
We'll be asking you again until you say yes, basically. So.
The state of dating right now. What is the state of dating? I think we're in a very fascinating time. When we first started the podcast, everyone seemed to be going through online dating fatigue. We spoke to so many people who were sick of online dating. They're like, I'm done with it, I'm taking a break from it. But now, 3.5 years later, one, people have at least admitted to the fact that online dating is here to stay. And it is one avenue for you to meet people. Yeah. So instead of blaming it, use it, embrace it. But two, I think everyone's seeking connection. I think like that's a word that's everyone wants right now. They don't know how to connect with people, whether it's in person or online. And they're looking for resources to do that. So that's why these yoga retreats are really popular these days.
Some kind of physical activity-based retreats like surfing camps.
These are really popular.
It's beyond the physical. It's like that you're with other people that like
connecting,
have the like
being present.
Minded. Yeah.
You're like connecting and disconnecting at the same time.
That is so the buzzword.
That seems to be like the buzzword. And even last night we were out with my friend Ryan, who's like in an accelerator for his startup. He's like, have you heard of a thing called a decelerator? And so it's like where a bunch of these startup founders get together.
Bros would do
I know.
that.
Right? It's amazing.
But they go to like Cancun for 10 days and then it's just like decompressing. And then same with Burning Man.
Yeah.
They have a decompression event. So I think we're on the decelerator program for online dating where people know when to take the right breaks, but they're also, as part of this decelerator, they're looking for ways to connect with other people.
I think to add to yours too is like connection doesn't necessarily mean get married, have kids anymore.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or
Like-
romance. It doesn't need to be romance.
Like exactly. Like connection. I think what state of the dating is like anything goes now, right? If you want the state addressed, but I think like, I mean, we talk to people in all sorts of configurations. Like we have like people that have been married for years that have opened up and are now polyamorous or just in open relationships. People that are like bachelors for life and like, or women that just like don't want to have children and they want to live a single life. Like I think back in the day that was like, oh, you're a leper if you want to like do something that's like against the norm. And I think this day and age, like kind of it's up to you to find the relationship that works for you or you and your partner. Like it's really up to you if you even which path you go down, right?
Absolutely. It's like free for all
Or
right
partners.
now. Or partners, yeah.
But yeah, I think it's actually exciting though at the same time because like I think what's caused so much divorce is that people felt they had to like prescribe to one method. And I think what's happening now is our generation is a lot of people had parents that got divorced or they've seen like other people get divorced. And I think a lot of people are hesitant to like jump into a relationship a lot of times. Like they want to go into the right relationship. And I think what's interesting is we actually did an episode with Ashley Madison, the cheating website, which was fascinating. And a lot of the people there got married when they were like 19 and they were in like their
A different time.
Yeah, like 40s and 50s, 60s. Like they were older than 20s and 30s millennial generation. And I think we see a lot less cheating as like a reason for ending relationships
For sure.
because people just are not getting into them as fast. Like if they're like, I want to play the field or I want to like discover myself or I want to be the best version of myself, like they're just not entering relationships yet. Or they're acknowledging that monogamy might not be from them through an ethical sense, right?
So one thing for me, at least in my own head, is that just because I'm single or wherever you are in the relationship or even lack thereof, everyone's still trying to figure themselves out.
Yeah.
No one is better than the other. It's
Nobody
not a
has to figure it
status.
out.
Like I hate it when people are like, you know, they are at a certain status with them, are engaged, I'm like married. I'm just like, okay, that's cool, but you're not better than me.
No.
You're not all that. You know,
It never
No.
ends too.
I went out in my 20s, and it stayed with me obviously because I'm bringing it up right now, right? I asked this girl out, I met at a party, so we went on a date, and she's just bringing up, I mean, it's one thing, it's too taboo to bring up your past relationship. It's another thing to like, yeah, I was engaged once. It's like, okay, cool. Do you want to talk about it? She was just taken aback. It's like, whoa. She's like kind of like Captain America. This is my shield, you know? I'm like, you're more than that, you know? Well, but she didn't really realize that, you know?
Back to state of dating. I think there isn't any taboo topics anymore either. Yeah. Like back in the day, it was don't talk about relationships on the first date. Don't talk about politics and religion. Everything at this point, it's like, I think
open field.
Yeah, I think also it's like we're in this mentality that there are a lot of options. I want to we don't have a lot of time. We want to like break through the clutter. Sometimes you only get that first date. So like if you just have surface date talk, like you walk away and you're just like, I could go either way on this person. Yeah. Like sometimes it's better to just dive in there, but there's a line. There's a line that you go too much and you're just like, okay. But I think like those things back in the day though were like a huge no-no not to talk about.
For me, I'm very comfortable talking about what happened to me in my failed marriage. Yeah. And a lot of people are like, oh. I was like, no, you want. I know you're curious about it.
Right. But you know, so I think what we can see now, just from a trends perspective, is we're coming full circle here. When online dating first started, it was all about quantity over quality. Those were the times when I lived in New York, and I would hear people say they're going on like 7 dates a week because it was all about back to back, your coffee date, your lunch date, your pre-dinner date, your after-dinner date. There was just, everybody was packing it in. You don't hear these stories as much anymore because people are becoming more mindful when it comes to dating, which is wonderful. Wow. We're coming back around, circling back to a time where researchers at a high level will say, oh, this younger generation, they're not getting married, or they're getting married at a much older age. It's not that we're scared to get married. We're just more mindful of the courtship process to make sure we're marrying the right person. Exactly. Because we've seen the older generations totally fuck that up. So we still want relationships. We still want connection. We want commitment. It's just we're taking our time to get there. And online dating now we're seeing is one vehicle for us to find.
I think that's the key, is like when it first came out in 2012, especially Tinder, because I was guilty of this too. It's like, it was so like, it was like a game. It was like new. It was exciting.
It was a game.
Yeah. And you were like, holy shit, like I could go out with like 10 people this week. Like, you know, and it was almost like bragging. Like I have all these dates. Right. And I think now, because it's one way of many, and it's a very accepted, like, I mean, most marriages, I think, start today on online dating or like dating apps. It's kind of just normalized now.
Yeah. Crazy, because that's my experience on Seeking. I was just curious, but at the same time, I was weirded out. But for me, I knew from the get-go, I'm just not really looking for a baby. I don't have money for that. I'm not a baller. Not yet, at least. But I'm just using it as a dating app, you know? But it was crazy to see how these kids, they're like 21, 22 years old, but they're just completely comfortable with like arrangements, everything. I'm like, it's a brave new world.
It is. It really is. But at the same time, they're having less sex. You know, you've heard about the sex drought with the younger generations, and they're dating less and they're hooking up less. The hookup culture is dying down now with the younger generation. So it's fascinating, because I almost feel like the younger generation have an old soul.
I agree.
They're a little bit more mature than we are.
The cool kids now, they're off the phone. They're off the phone. They're off social media.
They're doing all kinds of experiments.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that's different now too, and I know we want to wrap up soon, but I think it's like this state of just like, I think pansexual is where things are going. Like I feel like before it was like very black or white, like you're either gay, you're straight, and bi was like that kind of like you're just confused. And I think like what we're hearing from like way younger generations, it's like about the person. Yeah. It's not about the and like obviously with like gender fluidity, like there's just a lot of like change in that regard going on too that, I mean, admittedly is a little even foreign to me.
In kindergarten now, they don't even separate you as boys and girls. You like don't even call each other boys and girls. Everyone's the same.
Right. So I think things are going to even continue to go like it does more in that direction.
It does make you more open to like pretty much anything goes.
Yeah.
What are some takeaways from this episode?
I love that we're now making this a dateable podcast. So we've turned around.
Like you guys are hosting this.
We're hijacking your podcast.
This is fun. I get to be in the backseat now. This is fun.
We're totally using this as an episode of
questions.
Ours too.
Oh, fuck yes.
It's so weird because usually I have guys on this, and then like near the end of the podcast, I turn it around. Like, I like to do this. Like, do you have any questions for me? They're like, huh? Like,
I love it. You're like, none of my guests will talk at all. We're just like,
yeah.
from the get-go, like, we're on this.
Our first topic was sex parties, guys. It's always a good icebreaker. So takeaways.
That's how we end the Dateable podcast. So.
Well, I do it with like concluding remarks.
Perfect. Yeah. It's the same thing.
Concluding remarks / takeaways.
Yeah. To be repurposed for both podcasts. Who wants to start? I think this whole conversation just reiterates the fact that we need to give each other more time. And I think we've been here for 2 hours?
Already? Jesus.
Most dates don't last that long where you get this deep. So like when we first came in here, Tommy, we had very surface level conversation. It was exciting and fun and new, but this is where we connect, right?
Yeah.
Like this is where I'm like, I fucking know this guy now.
Yeah,
I feel like
for sure.
It brings us closer. And this is like the memory that I'll take with me when I go back to San Francisco. So my takeaway is this idea of deeper dating. How can we go deeper as opposed to casting a wider net? And I hope anybody who's out there in the dating world right now who's maybe feeling a loss or a little frustrated, you have to just give each other more time. If you see there's potential on a first date, keep going. Like don't start swiping for the next person because the grass is not always greener once you step on that lawn, right?
So I shouldn't be like throwing my phone against a brick wall when she's like, no, I'm tired, I don't want to see you. I should like, okay, maybe a month later I'll reach out to her again.
No, I don't think it's like about, you can't force anything either, right? That's what we've learned. You cannot force situations to happen. But if both people are willing to keep going, getting to know each other. And when I say deeper, it doesn't mean like more times of seeing each other, but every time you see each other, how can you get deeper into that conversation, get to know this person?
If you don't have it on the first date, but you still had a good time. Like if we had left after like just talking about the sex party, it's like,
it would have been cool.
Yeah. And it's like, come back again. Even if it wasn't like fireworks on date one, it's like, how do you like, obviously if you had a bad time and like you were offended anyway, don't go. But like if it was like you like the person enough, like just keep going with it and like seeing what happens. It doesn't even necessarily have to be romantic. How do you just keep building stuff? I think it just goes back to time. It's like in college and like other times you just organically got to know people and it like either developed into business partner or friendship or whatever it may be. So I think it's just like giving it that space really.
That's a fantastic point because again, connection is not about romantic connection. You could connect with someone and not want to be with them and not want to sleep with them.
Yeah.
When it comes to dating, we can't just categorize someone as potential or not potential. Everyone has potential for connection. That's all you're really trying to get because the more people you can connect with, the more you'll recognize a deep connection with like a romantic partner, right?
And I think even like some of these like friends first, I was like reading because I was just so like fascinated by this mentality because I think historically you're like, oh, you want to be friends? Like that's like downgrade, right? It's actually ideal because like you can keep dating other people and you don't get like fixated on one person. And then over time, you can see if like they are a good fit for you because your guards are down. You're just being yourselves. You're not trying to impress and all that.
Yeah.
But I think like my biggest takeaway from this is like use your past, but don't necessarily make your past wholly inform your future either.
Right.
It's like learn from your past, but don't let it get in the way of like being happy. Like really hard. Like we've all had traumatic experiences. Like they range and they differ. And it's really hard not to be like weary of the next person. But the reality is that is a different person. You're different now. So like how do you work with who you have and like who's in front of you, not like the past?
Not to bring it back to a teeny bopper movie, but I saw 5 Feet Apart. Have you seen that movie?
No.
5 what?
5 Feet Apart.
No.
I've never even heard of it.
It's about kids with cystic fibrosis. I want to say cystic fibrosis. It's an illness that has no cure and they can't be around each other. And when they are around each other, they have to have certain distance. Otherwise, they would contaminate each other's air. And then they could die from that. So in this movie, it's about sick kids. Nikki is the one that recommended it. It's about these sick kids in a hospital who fall in love. They have to keep 5 feet apart to be around each other.
Oh.
And they're so in it, they talk about how death is so scary sometimes because they could die any day. The main character says something that was so fascinating. I'm learning from a 12-year-old basically. But she said, death is almost the same as birth. Think about like you being in a womb and that's all you know. That's the world you know. And you had no idea there's a whole world outside, right? That's birth. Death is the same way. It's like another world that's just literally millimeters away from you, but you have no idea what it is until you get there. So I see the same as your past versus your future. Your future is a world that you just haven't even been born into yet.
Totally.
So why swim in what you currently have and think this is it? Because a different world could just be right outside the door.
Right?
So go watch that movie. And I hope it's cystic fibrosis that I'm talking about. Totally butchering it.
Well, that was not where I thought you were going with that, but I like it.
I feel healed. I feel cleansed. It was so good.
What are your closing remarks and takeaways?
I'm still stuck on the group sex thing. No, but I didn't realize like that was very therapeutic for me to bring up all that, and also seeking support from guys who've been through the same thing, because it is definitely tough for guys. I'm still recovering from what I've been through, and also just really like communicating on a much more nuanced, even if I'm not really sure about where I want to be, but even expressing that, which is really hard for a guy to do. Like this.
But stop saying that.
Yeah.
Stop saying it's really hard for men to do something because you're going to get stuck in the mentality, right?
Self-defeating.
Always say it's a possibility for me to express myself better.
There you go. Holy shit. Yeah.
You switch it around. It's all about how we word things.
Yeah.
It's a possibility for me to express myself better.
I don't know. I think your takeaway is a sign that you're willing to do the experiment.
Oh, I think you're totally open. You're like primed to do this.
I'm blossoming.
Just say yes.
Just
say
yes. You're growing up before our very eyes.
Julie, thank you so much for being on the Tommy Danger experiment.
So much
it's been
fun.
a blast.
So fun.
And when you're back in New York, we're going to do this again.
For sure.
Yeah.
If you ever come to SF, let us know.
Oh, definitely.
How do you usually wrap up your episodes?
Well, just like this.
Just like that? Okay, can we wrap up our way too?
Please.
This is like a weird joint episode.
I love it. It's so good.
Avengers coming together.
You're right. Ta-da. We're going to wrap it up. Stay dateable. The Dateable Podcast is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts you'll love at frolic.media/podcasts. Want to continue the conversation? First, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter with the handle @DateablePodcast. Tag us in any post with the hashtag StayDateable, and trust us, we look at all of those posts. Then head over to our website, dateablepodcast.com. There you'll find all the episodes as well as articles, videos, and our coaching service with vetted industry experts. You can also find our premium Why series where we dissect, analyze, and offer solutions to some of the most common dating conundrums. We're also downloadable for free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Overcast, Stitcher Radio, and other podcast platforms. Your feedback is valuable to us, so don't forget to leave us a review. And most importantly, remember to stay dateable.